Hello, it's time for another book review. This time it's about the Catalogue of Shipwrecked Books by Edward Wilson Lee. It was published in 2018. It has 340 pages for the chapters, 35 pages for the notes, and 24 pages for illustrations and index. I stumbled upon this book by pure chance on a very small seaside resort and in a small bookshop. Didn't expect there anything, but this is currently one of my most favorite books due to the character which is portrayed in there. It's about the illegitimate son of Christopher Columbus. His name is Hernando or Fernando Columbus, and yeah, it basically goes through his lives, his achievements, and kind of his extraordinary ambitions he had during the time in the early 16th century. So the book starts off with his childhood, the relationship to the father. Christopher Columbus is quite a controversial person. He achieved something, definitely. He was tremendously lucky in his endeavors. The first time I didn't know actually somebody else was going to beat him on the way back to the king, announcing that they discovered America. But due to ill health, this other fellow that died shortly after arriving, and so Christopher was the only one kind of claiming to it. And he also was very deep. Christopher was very deep into kind of religious prophecy. He had his own book of prophecies, and to everybody he spoke to, he was like really saying, "Yes, I have the connection to God. I understand the Bible. Everything what I'm doing is already predicted, and uh, you need to give me some money and your support because I'm right." And so yeah, that's quite interesting. In his early childhood, Fernando was, I think it was on the third journey to America, and of course, the beginning of the settling of the colonies was quite bad. There were a few attempts of colonies which failed, and there was also all the time the problem of getting new resources for more voyages. Um, so yeah, that's the relation to the father. But his upbringing was quite closely to the court, to the Spanish court. I think it was Juan Infanta Juan. He was serving as a kind of bookkeeper in and out. This was his first contact with kind of listing things. I think one of the main things I would connect with Fernando is keeping lists. He loved, or not loved, but he really appreciated lists from early on. More or less, probably you can describe him as a nerd, and he was yeah, very very meticulous in kind of taking notes and sorting things, which came later on very handy because his one of his main achievements during his lifetime were that he collected about 20,000 books and prints, contemporary books and prints, particularly on not many classical things which were normally in the libraries of those times. So this was quite good, and well, for cataloging, for managing this amount of items, lists are basically the only way to go. Um, okay, then another thing. So basically, he grew up on the Spanish court, learned about lists. He learned about the kind of how to kind of behave in high society. He had to do quite a few things for his dad when the relationship between the monarch and Christopher Columbus kind of went downhill. They had to kind of stay in for it, so they took the brunt of criticism, and which came basically mainly from that there were some misdeeds going on in the colonies, and people reported them. And yes, Christopher, well, basically his children had to kind of try to sort it out in the court. So yeah, those were their upbringing. Then yeah, let's go to the his collection. So basically, he grew up. Columbus died somewhere, and there was a very long struggle going on, kind of how big their inheritance was for the children, and being kind of born out of wedlock, it was really difficult for Fernando, kind of knowing what's going on. And his brother, he seems to have been not the brightest. He took on the colonies. He got also most of the inheritance, and not only Christopher screwed it up in terms of with sleeping around. Also, his brother did the same, but he did it in a way of kind of going to harm one of the biggest families in Spain. So there was a big dispute going on. Fernando had to go to Rome to this kind of to look after the legal affair with papacy, and kind of this trip introduced him to the library of Rome. He went to Venice, and there he had already some resources to buy books. He was an avid book buyer all the time, and this was basically when he started collecting books, or when kind of the collection grew. And from then on, he even traveled through Europe to all the big places where books were being published. Back then, Venice was the main, or one of the biggest publishing hubs. Everything that was new coming from the Orient was basically printed there. So he had very good connections to there. And basically, of all the books he got, quite a few of them, he indexed them, which was also which was a new thing. And he also wrote summaries of the books, so that somebody was going to be interested in the books, that they could read quickly up what's going to be in the books. And he also had this own classification system to know straight away where something was, about what it was. Similar also for the pictures, he had a nice system to say, okay, is it a picture about nature? Are there any humans in there? What's else in there? So just by a glance at this kind of index number he gave every picture, you would know already sort of what's in it. So he categorized them in the index, so to say. So yeah, this was, I will say more about the library a bit later, and at basically the state of the library at the end of his life. Another thing he did, he was also a cartographer. At one point he wanted to map Spain, which was met with some resistance by the aristocracy there, because yes, having maps means being taxed better, and yes, nobody likes being taxed, so there was some development against it. Also, there was the dispute going on with the Portuguese, kind of which lands belonged to whom, and Fernando was involved there. He seems to have understood quite a bit about the math. There was also some espionage going on with the Portuguese court, and due to those disputes, Fernando was writing a biography about his father, which is still one of the main sources we have nowadays. So, and yes, Fernando, he collected lots of sources to make things very, very watertight. So yeah, I spoke already about the relationship to the brother. So basically, the brother more or less used him, or used him at some places to kind of sort out the issues he created, and even later on when it was about the inheritance, I think he took some of the things actually Fernando should get, but yeah, this happens. later on in his life, he was meant to go back to America, but then he returned quickly back to Europe. And only, I think, yes, short before his death, he went back again to America. Yes, I spoke about that he traveled through Europe. Later in his life, and he settled down in Seville. There where Christopher also was living for some time. Originally, the family came from Italy, and there he created his library. He had very strict ideas, kind of how the library would work. People would only have access to the index books and not to the actual books, only when the source was really needed. So it was, the level of information processing was already quite high. And when he died, he said, okay, a certain portion of my inheritance is meant for keeping up buying new books every year. He also teamed up with a couple of scholars to maintain the library, which worked out partly. It looks like he had no kind of direct family. Later on in his will, it became clear that he also had some kind of illegitimate offspring, because he supported some of the women. And yes, unfortunately, after he died, it was not really recognized what he basically achieved. So the vast collection was fell apart over the centuries. Then there was this big Spanish Inquisition. So books were sorted out because they were not accepted. He also collected books in other languages, and I think that yes, there's something left in Seville. I definitely would like to go to check it out. And so, what could be said in conclusion about Fernando? So definitely, he was his time. He was ahead of his time, and it was very difficult for his contemporaries to understand why should you collect data, have a big library about contemporary things. And also the index system he had was quite advanced, quite interesting. And it's just a shame that he didn't have more clout due to his social status, that this was continued. And that's pretty much everything about this book. I definitely enjoyed it a lot. It's also available in Spanish, and I think at some point I read that actually the way how this book came about. So I think in Denmark they found in an old library they found a summary book, which was basically from up to the title. So basically he bought a couple of books, and maybe 100 or so. He shipped them to Spain, but this ship sank, and there was only kind of the index left of the books that he bought, and that's basically the title, the Catalogue of the Shipwrecked Books. So, and this appeared somewhere in Denmark, and somehow they were able to trace it back to Fernando, because yes, he's quite unknown. And this research came about. So and I think I read somewhere that they wanted to publish another book about the contents of those books, which were summarized there. So I'm looking forward to this, but it looks like it's already a few years, and I haven't seen any updates, so we might not see this. But thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.